When a child disappears in the middle of the village and nobody sees, nobody knows. Is the village still a village without a child to raise? When nobody sees and nobody knows. Child life endangered means innocence is lost. We've become predators of the children living among us. Can't call on Jesus, he already died for us. Now it's comes to us, yeah. Where we place our trust. People take this serious. Oh, everything's lost, everything's lost, everything's lost. Yeah, everything's lost, everything's lost, everything's lost. To every child that we abandon, we die a little with him. We lose a battle that we can win. House of dark secrets rising in the middle of the city, and everyone sees, nobody knows. Everyone sees, nobody knows. As it rises, the citizens fall deeper into poverty. Everyone sees, nobody knows. All laws are broken, civility is lost, justice overtaken by the rule of force. Democracy is boldly slipping away from us, but it's left to us. Yeah. All leaders are dangerous. Take this serious. Oh, everything's lost, everything's lost, everything's lost. Yeah. Everything's lost, everything's lost, everything's lost. Anytime justice denied, lawlessness settles in. We lose in battles that we can win.
All right, it's already 5 minutes past the good old hour of 6 o'clock. Today being the 12th of February 2023. And that is where I want to say a special good evening, a special welcome to all of you already locked to the spot that you got. And that is the spot. The Civic Vibes program is aired on every 6 o'clock on a Sunday. And I want to say a special greetings and welcome to you, no matter where you are, be it in Dominica, this blessed rock that is, in the region, or even further afield, greetings and welcome. Let me just touch on some of you who are already locked into the live as we move it on here. This evening, we have persons like Eliza Louise Gomes, you are there, Cheryl Bernadette Garaway, Good evening to you as well. Clarolyn Warrington, Bernice Coffee, Dory Drago, Pat Cobbett, Carol Bruni. Good evening to you in a very special way. Medina Sandhouse, Margel Durand, Justin James, John Harry, Brother Dave Bertrand, Mali Ostri, Olivia Esprit, all those of you who are here with us already and those to come, a very, very good evening. So we have some more persons logging on at this time. Marvella Defoe, you're there as well. Good evening to you. Miss Challenger as well. Good evening to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to be in your company each and every Sunday. And from the Civic Vibes team, and let me say a special good afternoon to you guys once more. This afternoon, it's going to be yet another very interesting program we have in store for you guys out there. But just before we go to the program itself in terms of an outline, I have with me here my brother, friend, co-host, that is, of the Civic Vibes program, with a big smile on his face, Alvin Thomas. I wonder why Alvin is smiling like that this afternoon. Alvin, is it the Super Bowl, Alvin?
You're right, man. You're right. You're right. This is Super Bowl Sunday, man.
Better I can play the lottery, Alvin.
Yeah, and you know, this is one of the biggest sport played in the US, bigger than NBA or any of the other sports. So Super Bowl Sunday is really a big day. So I have 1 foot in there and 1 foot out, hoping to go watch that game. I'm betting on the underdogs today, the Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles, as a fourth time in franchise history, they're going into a Super Bowl as against the Chiefs, Kansas City's Chiefs. That's their fourth time, and Philadelphia Eagles have only won 2 titles. The Chiefs are going for their third. So I'm going for the underdogs. The city of brotherly love, as they say, Philly. So that's where I am. And as you know, it's big. There's Super Bowl parties all over the place, and folks are having fun. So we're looking forward to a good game tonight. But having said that, it's a pleasure to be back on Civic Vibes. We have that civic responsibility to do.
Indeed.
And we cannot give up on that, Lofty. Lofty, we cannot. I don't care what folks say, whether they say, boy, you guys are tired talk, we, no nipo pale. I think it was Afi who said on Friday, I think, or Thursday, he was on Matt Show, and he made a very good point. He said, look, some people might be saying, oh, there's so much talk. What about the action? I think the action will come. I think we have to inform the people, provide them with the information and the knowledge. And at some point, I'm sure action will happen. Let me just remind people, if we go back in history, when Hitler and Stalin created their dictatorship, it didn't happen overnight, you know. They constantly brainwashed the people to the extent where they got them where they wanted. But guess what? It finally collapsed. At some point, it collapsed. When the people couldn't take anymore, it collapsed. So we've seen in history where dictators have been brought down. And if that's where this administration is heading in Dominica, they will be brought down. I have no doubts about that. So I think we need to continue the dialogue, the conversation. And today, as I'm sure, we'll be dealing with the whole question of electoral reform. And against the context and the background, as I always say, election has consequences. If you elect the wrong people to drive the bus, they will drive you to the precipice. So it's the same thing with election. And what hopefully we'll go into as we get into the conversation in a minute, I have looked at a sort of comparison of certain areas within the electoral reform process, namely ID card, voters list, campaign finance, media time, you know, and just kind of look at the trend as it obtained in the region, in our territory, especially within the OECS. So I've sort of looked at St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Kitts, Antigua, and Dominica. These are the 5 islands in the recent 2 years or so that have had elections. And we will look at some specific areas, as I said, and then hopefully we can build on that and compare that to where we want to go in terms of Dominica's own electoral reform. So a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. It's nice to have you guys locked in. I know it's also Carnival season back home, Lofty. I think that as we speak now, there is a Princess show or some show going on. I had it on listening earlier as well. So hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And to all our folks who have locked in, we say welcome. Good to have you again another Sunday.
All righty. Thank you very much, my brother Alvin. Indeed, always a pleasure to have you here. Just before we get into things here, you mentioned Arthur a while ago. Let me just tell folks out there that Arthur Mate, he lost a brother of his sometime earlier this morning at the PMH, that is, name was Desmond. And so on behalf of Civic Vibes and the team here, we want to send our condolences to Arthur Mate, great patriotic brother, on the loss of his brother, as he continued to mourn the loss of brother Desmond. Brother name was Desmond. So Arthur, to you and your family, we extend sympathies to you out there, my brother, as you go through your time of mourning on the loss of one of your brothers. Also, another brother who should have been here with us tonight, in the name of Pastor Randy Rodney. He was all well oiled, that is, and ready to go. But unfortunately, this week, I think it was Thursday of this week, I believe, or Wednesday thereabout, Pastor Randy indicated to us that he lost his mother. And so he could not be here with us tonight on a program that we had lined up for you. And you know, Pastor Randy, he mixed no water in his words, as it were, where the truth is concerned. But we wish Pastor Randy and the entire family well on the loss of his mom. And so we from the Civic Vibes team and all of you are listening and watching there as well, I know you guys want to convey your sympathies and condolences to Arthur Martin and Pastor Randy Rodney at this time as well. Those of you celebrating one thing or another, be it just celebrating the entrance of a newborn, or whatever it is you're celebrating, you know, we at Civic Vibes, we also join in that celebration with you as well. Also, folks, just in terms of some bit of information, the numbers that you can call to the program, just in case you want to contribute to the program, they are 245-2396. Again, let me repeat that, 245-2396. You can call in or send us a WhatsApp message based on your contribution. Also, another line that is devoted to you guys out there, it is 615-9470. Again, I repeat, 615-9470. We are live on Facebook now, and as well, we can tell you that from last week, we have been live on YouTube as well. So those of you who wants to sit in the comfort of your home and put Civic Vibes on your big television screen via the YouTube channel, you can do that as well. If you go to YouTube now, whatever we are seeing here now on Facebook, it is also being streamed live on YouTube as well. So we are, tweaking it, improving it as we go along. Soon to come, very soon to come, we'll have more added features to make your listening pleasure much more appreciative out there. So yes, we have a number of folks already here. I touched some of you already, but let me just run back to that board. David Joseph, good evening to you. Dory Drago, good evening to you. Viva Mamu, good evening to you. Shara, Tanya Georges, good evening to you as well. Warning to Prince, you are there. Marvella Defoe, I think I called you earlier. Brother Jeffrey Brisbane, good evening to you in a very special way. Marlene Shillingford, you are there as well. Jeffrey Brisbane is saying, Lofty, I am tuned in, and my condolences to Pastor Randy Rodney and Arthur Martin in terms of their loss. Thank you very much, Brother Brisbane, for that. We also have Brian Joseph is here as well. We also have Lynn Loda Jack. Good evening to you, my friend, in a very special way indeed. So folks, welcome indeed. Let me just give you guys an outline of the program to come here. We will be starting off the program, as you heard Alvin alluded to a while ago, in terms of some of the matters relating to free and fair elections in Dominica. Folks, as Alvin said, and I want to echo what Alvin said, free and fair election have been eluding us in Dominica for some time. And that is why we here at Civic Vibes, we will spare no effort, absolutely no effort, to continue to pound that pavement, as it were, for free and fair elections to be made available to us in Dominica. And so we are always on the ball, and I hope that you guys, you too, you are always on the ball with us. Well, by your attendance, we know that you're on the ball with us. So thank you very much. So this afternoon, it's yet another afternoon where we'll be going into some more details as to what we think ought to be, must be. It's imperative for us to have that process in Dominica be cleaned up where our election is concerned, especially our general election is concerned. At the bottom of the hour, we're expecting a special invited guest in the name of Mr. Joshua Francis, lawyer Joshua Francis. He should be making an appearance here with us just for about half an hour to talk on an all-important issue affecting some Dominicans, that those who are presently going through some situation that is with the NEP, the National Employment Program in Dominica. Joshua have some much more details as it pertains to the plight of some young persons. So let us be giving Joshua our undivided attention when he gets here about the 6:30 hour this evening. All right. But before we get to Joshua, let me just move back to my brother Alvin Thomas here. And Alvin, also on the Super Bowl, just before I turn to you, it's history in the making all along. I'm hearing that some black folks will be starting off later as it pertains to the Super Bowl action, and also celebrating 50 years of women in the military in America.
Right.
The flights that will be overhead during that demonstration, it will be strictly women.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That will be in command of these jets.
Yeah, absolutely. And that too is that too, as you know, this month is Black History Month. February is usually Black History Month.
Yes.
So it's always promoting the history of black achievement in the US. And that is something that have gone somewhat unnoticed, and some people don't want to talk about it or want to prevent us from talking about it. But black folks have contributed tremendously to the development of this country. And even black folks from the Caribbean, as you know, many moons ago, Caribbean people migrated to the US, to the UK, to Canada, and helped develop those countries. So yes, this Super Bowl will have that as well. You have Rihanna, which is a Barbados resident from Barbados. She'll be doing the highlights here. She'll be one of the top during the halftime that will be performing. And we know Rihanna is from Barbados, very committed to her country, Barbados, give back to her country quite a bit. So it's going to be a very interesting and historical Super Bowl this year. And maybe while we're talking on that, Lofty, it behoves me sometime, because I know back home too, we have a number of people that have contributed to our history in Dominica. But do you hear about them? Do you hear anything about who was Rosie Douglas, or who was E.O. Libla, or who was Frank Barron, or who was the person who started up the E.C. Low Black? You know, I think we need to observe that too. And this is one of the things I think young people and we need to do. Have a historical museum somewhere where we can celebrate our people who have gone before us and have paid the way, the ballas, where we can have, I mean, you can incorporate that with historical figures, personalities, people, plus art. I mean, you had Earl Etienne, who passed a couple months ago, a distinguished art person. I mean, we still have with us Alwyn Bully. It would have been so nice if we have somewhere a sort of museum place, maybe in the capital, where when the tourist comes in and young people can go and learn our history. Maybe we wouldn't have these rascals that we have now running the country the way they're running it, as if they are Johnny come late, you know? So I just wanted to plug that in.
Yeah, man, Alvin. Well, thank you very much for that valuable contribution indeed. You know, a lot of countries, they celebrate their heroes, they celebrate their trailblazers, they do whatever they have to do, Alvin, you know, to remember persons who did well and even continue to do well for their country. But it seems as if in Dominica, we have been paying very, very little attention, lip service that is, to those folks. And so I personally, Alvin, I put no, you know, water in my wine, as it were. I say that this government, this present-day government headed by Roosevelt Skerritt, the Dominican Labour Party, they have basically plateaued. They can do no more in terms of the interests of Dominicans. And when we talk about these things, then we should be looking to another administration to sort of, you know, get those things off the ground in the interest of Dominica and Dominicans. That is where my mind is at. But Alvin, it is what, 6:22. Let us see if we can, get the ball rolling, as it were, on the conversations we are about to pick up on this afternoon. One, electoral reform, and then after, just in a while, Joshua should be making his entrance here on that situation with our young people, where the National Employment Program is concerned. Over to you, Alvin.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Lofty. A pleasant good afternoon to all our many folks who have been tuned in with us. It's always a pleasure to have you guys on board. As I have said repeatedly, and you guys may hear it as some people might say it's an old record. When you get an old record, you say you're tired of hearing that record. Is that what it is, Lofty?
Yep.
Do you like listening to some of these old records, especially the old violent ones? You can't find them anymore, but you can go on YouTube and get the old records.
Yeah, man. There's a special thing about these old records.
Oh yeah. Like they say, how they say it, old wine in new bottles or something like that. But no, seriously though, I think there's a lot of conversation going now as regards to electoral reform for Dominica. And I think these conversations are quite useful. I don't think we should stop it. Some people have the view that we have beaten or flogged that horse too much, and the horse has no life anymore. I don't share that view. I think, as the CCJ reports rightly pointed out, elections are a hallmark of one's democracy. And it's more than just going to the polls and cast your vote. It requires your engagement throughout. In other words, we can't live democracy on its own and think it will be all okay. We have to constantly be vigilant and guarded. But having said that, though, the election part, where we go and do our duty and vote, does have consequences. And as a result, I think it is more than time for us to engage, as it were, and have some kind of reform that would make our elections in Dominica not just free and fair, which is a term you hear used all the time. The OAS uses it, the Commonwealth. Oh, the election was free and fair. But was it transparent? And as I will share in a minute and just do some comparisons, you will see that it's not necessarily, it wasn't always necessarily fair, or rather transparent. So one of the other thing I would say too, though, that is that you may have heard us saying before, La bab kamawado puidife uzesao. Do you know what is the interpretation or the translation of that? La bab kamawado puidife uzesao. You've heard that before. What does that mean?
Alvin, you try and put me on the spot in the Patois dialect, but I think it means, Alvin, when your neighbor's beard is on fire, take water and wet yours. I think that is it.
Well, that's the literal translation. But what it means is that, hey, if something bad is happening out there with your neighbor, is also on fire, wet yours or safeguard your area so that what is happening there doesn't happen to you.
Very well.
Okay. And I, as you know, I'm old school, so I like using those Creole, as you say, what should I call them? I wouldn't say dialect, but those Creole proverbs. So it also means too that you could interpret it to means that if you're doing something like we're doing our electoral reform now, what are some of the best practices that we can adopt from elsewhere? The best practices. And what are some of the bad practices we should not encourage in our reform? So that is what it clearly means. And what I have done in for us to have that kind of conversation going was to look at least 4 other islands in the region, namely within the OECS, which have had elections within the last, say, 2 years or so, starting 2021. And just kind of make some comparison, because one of the areas that Sir Byron indicated as the phase 1 to implement almost immediately had to do with the electors list, the registry.
Yes.
And that too was an area that the CCJ made a lot of emphasis on. You may have heard me said that previously on this program, that this is the crux of your election. If the list, the registry that have the names of the people to vote is corrupt, is compromised, the end result is going to be compromised, especially in a situation where you don't have voters ID, you're not allowed to show IDs. You just show up at the poll, you say, hey, I'm Loftus Duran. And if the polling clerk knows you, she say, yeah, you don't have to show her no ID, no birth certificate, nothing to establish your Loftus Duran, and you vote. And even from the last election when the OAS reported on areas in Dominica, they made it absolutely clear what are some of the bad practices that they observe as it relates to the electors list and how that was being managed. So I think it's a good area we can start off. There are other areas we can look at in future programs, like, for example, the voters ID card, identification card, which is pretty much tied into with the list. Campaign finance, which is a major area, which also, I must say, Sir Byron raised in his report, which I will reference at some point. Campaign finance, access to the media, residency, the whole issue of residency. So these are some of the areas that have been highlighted. But let's just look at the voters list for now. And let's take St. Lucia. And
just before you go to the voters list, Alvin, former agricultural minister in Dominica, Mr. Peter Carbon, he's agreeing with you in his writings here, and he's saying free and fair elections is the only tool available to voters to evaluate politicians. Stealing elections allow politicians to take the well-being of citizens for granted. I just have to plug that in.
Absolutely. I can't agree with him more than that. Absolutely. And that is what I'm saying. Let me say, Lofty, the only reason, there's no other reason, the only reason that Prime Minister Skerrit calls those snap elections the way he's calling it is because he knows our electoral process is flawed. There's no other reason. Simple as that. And it's only a fool who wants to tell himself, well, you know, it's not this or it's not that. He knows the system is flawed and he takes advantage of that. And I will point out in some respect where that is. And that's the only reason that he calls it snap and try to get away with murder, as it were. I think I see our guest, Joshua. What do we want to do?
Yeah, I think I saw Joshua.
Yeah, I saw him came on, but he
a while ago. Well,
he dropped off.
He dropped off. Well, we can stick around because it wouldn't be, you know.
Okay.
Let me just play something here in terms of
you want me to continue or you?
No, let me just, you know, sort of break the mood now and
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Something here and
that's fine.
We'll try to get Joshua on the line because it is his time now, 6:30.
Okay,
right?
Certainly, no problem.
And then we will get into the conversations we're having in. All right, folks, yes, those of you listening, tuned in at this time, you're listening and watching the program Civic Vibes aired each and every Sunday from 6 o'clock. It is now 6:30. We are waiting Mr. Joshua Francis to have a conversation with us here for just about half an hour. So we're waiting for Mr. Joshua Francis to log back in. We saw him a while ago. But in the meantime and between time, we're going to give you some old music from Africa. Can anyone out there tell me what year or how old was this brother when he did this number? Just a teaser, brain teaser. This brother is from Malawi in Africa.
Agide gogo wana madingo Namuya mikira Udi na madingo Mwana mene Mwana wanzeri Agide gogo wana madingo Namuya mikira Udi na madingo Mwana mene Mwana wanzeri Simuku na mako Kawizi na mwe Malota ine Bambo wanga dandisi Enda sarandeka Kavizina mwe ni malota ine Bambo wanga atamwali Ndatsandeka Gonda mama Gonda une mama mwe Gonda mama Chalamanda Zafera mwenda we Gonda mama Gonda une mama mwe Gonda mama Chalamanda Zafera mwenda we Nangomba mbilio mbili tumaona leo Nangomba mbilio
Any guess of this brother's age just for people? All right, I think we have Joshua back. He's just logged back in. So just to answer my own quiz, people, this brother here from Africa, that's Malawi in Africa, he did this number at the ripe old age of 91. Very, very sweet music indeed from this brother. Let's see if we can make contact now with our special invited guest here, brother Joshua Francis. Are you there, sir? Joshua, are you hearing us?
Yeah, I see him there, but his mic looked like it's muted. Okay.
Yes.
His mic is still muted.
Joshua, you need to unmute your mic. Josh, you are there, but we're not hearing you. You need to unmute your mic.
Mapunziro onse akapunzire ku UK. Mapunziro onse apunzire ku UK. Namba gogo namba komatimbeko chemeri kunali chemeri
All right, Joshua, I think you're there now. Yes, you just unmute that mic. Joshua, are you hearing me loud and clear? I think we're having a little technical difficulty here. At least your mic is now on mute, but we're not hearing you. Yes, Josh, are you hearing me? Joshua, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me, Josh? Something seems to be.
He seems to be having some technical difficulty.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right, folks, we're gonna try to get back Joshua in, but as we try to get him back, Alvin, yes, you can continue. If once we rectify that problem with Joshua, we will, try to get him back. All right. He said he's gonna restart whatever device he's trying to log in.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
All right. Well, let me ask
sorry
before we had that break. What I did was to just kind of as I said, draw reference or comparisons to what obtains in some of the islands, especially within the OECS, and look at some specific areas, as I said, because we're now intending to reform. We're the only island in the region within CARICOM that has not undertaken some sort of reform of our electoral process. And every other island has. But even where there has been reform and you have in place processes like voters identification card, maybe, as we say, some reform as it relates to the list, the electors list, there are still some areas that are of concern to folks in the region, and should be of concern to us as well, since we are now coming at the back end of trying to introduce some sort of reform that, like I said earlier, we can learn from and adopt some of the best practices, not the bad practices. And like I say, so I wanted to look at one specific area which relates to the electors list, or the voters registry, as it's sometimes called. And St. Lucia had their election on the 26th of July, 2021. They had that just a little over, going into 2 years now, I would say. You have where Philip Pierre, the now current Prime Minister of the St. Lucia Labour Party. The interesting thing, though, I would say about St. Lucia is that, as you yourself would know, Lofty, they don't keep dirty diapers on them too long. They changed the government we have. So you've had a very robust, one might say, in terms of the United Workers' Party or the St. Lucia Labour Party, with either Compton and Chasnet and King, and, you know, back and forth, which speaks, you know, pretty well. But on the question of that last election that they had back in July of 2021, you had the Commonwealth Observers Group there. And here's what they said as it relates to the registry. And bear in mind, St. Lucia, as I said, has done some electoral reform. They have voters' ID cards, so you cannot vote without an ID card. Unfortunately, they don't have in place, as we speak, any legislation that it relates to campaign financing. And that's an area we will explore at some future programs. But in terms of the registry, the observer, Commonwealth Observer made the comment, to inspire confidence in the electoral process, a reliable voters registry is vital in providing for a transparent and credible election. Yet the words they use, they didn't say free and fair election. They said a reliable voters registry is vital in providing for a transparent and credible election. The number of voters on the voters list far exceeds the number of eligible voters, rendering the list inaccurate. That was the Commonwealth making that comment about St. Lucia back on their last general election in 2021. This has implication for the accuracy of the voters' turnout, as well as the actual number of voters who vote in polling stations. There is need for the voter registry to reflect more accurately the size of the total population in St. Lucia. And they went on further to state that there is need for a review of the voter registration so that it reflects more accurately the size of the total population in St. Lucia. During that election back then in 2021, the St. Lucia population was estimated about a little over 179,650. And the number of persons on the voters list for that particular year election was 174,270. So clearly, you can see the likelihood of some kind of discrepancy. So that's St. Lucia. They have electoral reform. They have ID card. But here you have a situation as it relates to the registry. And I'm going to pivot that to say, one of the things we have to guard ourselves against as well is not just having the reform and having the legislations and the regulations as being proposed by Sir Byron, but it's a question of enforcement. That is critical. Enforcement is critical because you can have all the great laws on the books that you want. But if you have the head of your country saying no law, no constitution will prevent him to do what he has to do or he wants to do, then clearly we're not going to observe the law. And that is also a breakdown in democracy when no one respects or applies the law. I mean, we know now, and I heard on Matt's show last couple of days, the question about economy and the fact that the prime minister is taking $64,000 a month and how many mansions he's building. But we have on the statute book what is called an Integrity in Public Office Act, the IPO, which is supposed to safeguard and look into those things. But there's no teeth, nothing is happening. So I'm saying that to say that we can very well have the reform, but if we don't, and that's why I say democracy is not just going and vote one time. If you don't constantly safeguard and protect our democracy, we can have all this thing that we have, like St. Lucia with voter ID card, but yet the observers are raising some serious concerns as it relates to the registry, the voters list. Here's what in Grenada. Grenada followed right after St. Lucia with their elections. Grenada election was held on June the 24th, 2022. And also in Grenada, you have voters ID card. And they've had some reform, okay? And the OAS in their report, when they presented the report, again, we are looking at the voters list for now. The OAS mission also noted concern about the cleansing of the voters list, particularly with regards to the removal of deceased electors. The PEO conducts this procedure. That's the similar to the chief election officer. That's the position there, based on a list provided by the civil registry, which include the name of persons 18 years and over who have died in Grenada. Upon receipt of the file, registering officers must carry out their own investigation to establish if the deceased persons were electors. The mission observed that since 2014, and bear in mind that election was held in 2022, they're saying since 2014, death certificates have included the birth registration number of the deceased person, but this information is not included in the list submitted, which hampers the work of the electoral authority. Voters' lists are in perpetual state of flux, and it is the responsibility of the electoral institution to ensure that the document is as accurate as possible in order to strengthen the registration process. And as recommended in the report published by the OAS of previous election, the mission recommend amending the Representation of the People's Act, RPA, to specify that where a Commonwealth citizen wishes to be registered but does not possess the required document, that the RPA, a declaration from the Justice of the Peace, can only be accepted if it is accompanied by proof of a legal entry into the country issued by the immigration, goes on to say. So here as well, they are raising concerns as it relates to the electors list or the voters list. For that particular election, they were a little better than St. Lucia and even Dominica, as we will see in a while. The population at the time for Grenada was 124,610, and the electors list was 87,506. So you have a reasonable buffer. But even with that 87,506, the concerns was raised as it relates to names on that list that should not be on that list. Okay. Let's look at St. Kitts Nevis. St. Kitts Nevis had their elections right after Grenada. They had their elections on August the 5th, 2022. And the OAS again was in there and made submitted a report. And here's what the OAS says, and relating to the voters list. This generated question about whether the voters list was the proper list on which the election should be held. So people had concerns regarding the list. Bear in mind again, like Grenada, like St. Lucia, St. Kitts has had some aspect of reform. They do require ID to vote. St. Kitts does not, let's see. St. Kitts also does not have any legislation or regulation as it relates to campaign finance. And so is Grenada. So Grenada doesn't have, St. Kitts doesn't have, St. Lucia doesn't have. The OAS mission inquired about this issue in a meeting with the Electoral Commission and supervisors of election, and noting some disagreement about how and whether the decision to publish the revised mail list had been reached. Concerns again with the voters list, that people were saying, hey, that list is not what it should be. Okay. Dominica came right after St. Kitts on December 6, 2022 election. Let me just share that as well. The population of St. Kitts during that election was 47, St. Kitts Nevis, 47,657. The electors on the voters list for St. Kitts was 38,015, and Nevis 12,933. The population, as I said, for the combined Twin Islands country was 47,657. So clearly you have a problem there, that the list is not being cleansed properly. So you have, as a result, names that should not be on the list. The good thing about it, like I said, which is a little better than where we are, they have some identification, which we don't. Dominica, of course, the OAS raised the concern as it related to voters' ID card, which is something they have been repeating over and over. But in terms of the list, on page 9, the OAS observer says, during its observation, the mission also noted several cases. They didn't say few cases. They said several cases where voters with the same or very similar names and other demographic data were included in the voters list posted at the polling station. Several, that's the OAS saying, that's what they observed. In one instance, witnessed by an OAS observer, neither the polling station staff nor the party representatives were able to conclusively identify which of the names on their list related to a voter who had presented at the polling station. Standardized identification criteria or tools would assist in resolving similar occurrences. And they go on to make several other comments as it relates to the list. Now, in terms of the population vis-a-vis the number of persons on the electors list, Dominica population then stood estimated at 72,737, and the voters list was 74,844. So you had a total of 74,844 in the voters list or registered, as compared to a population in Dominica of 72,737. So herein again lies the discrepancy, that you have a voters list that is way more than what the population is. And as pointed out there, the OAS says they saw several cases where voters had similar name, demographic data that was similar. So clearly, if we are going to undertake our reform, that's an area that we have to pay very close attention to, very, very close attention to. Let's look at Antigua. Antigua is the most current one. Antigua had the elections just last month on January the 18th. And the OAS again, the OAS made some observation. And we're dealing again with the electors list. Currently, they're saying for Antigua, the updating procedure, cleansing of the register of electors for deceased person remains ad hoc, in the sense that there are no official procedure established in the current electoral laws to facilitate the regularized receipt of pertinent information from other entities as needed. In its engagement with the pre-electoral period, the mission took note of concerns expressed by stakeholders regarding the timing of publication of the Register of Electors. The Representation of the People's Act, number 20 of 2010, specified that the final registry of election should be published no later than 14 days after the writ has been issued. Every month, the Antigua, the Electoral Commission prepares two supplementary lists, a list of new applicants and a list of deceased electors, and transfers known as a C list. But even then, the OAS is observing that that is ad hoc. It is not done in a manner that gives a clear, one might say, a clean bill of sale in terms of the electors list. As far as the elections as well, Antigua was a little better compared to St. Lucia, maybe Grenada, or even nowhere close to Dominica. Antigua had an estimated population of 93,763 during the last election, and the electors list was at 60,916. So you had a good buffer there. What I'm saying in all of this, and why I'm saying all of that, I'm saying this to say, Lofty, that even where in these four countries that I've highlighted, St. Lucia, Grenada, Antigua, St. Kitts, where they have some kind of electoral reform, where they are all using voters' ID card, as it relates to the electors list, there are still some serious issues. And if we are going into this now, and I agree with some of the persons who have expressed their position on that. I heard Mackenzie making the point too on Matt's show that there is a need for us to know what is being presented so that we try to do it as best as we can the first time around, rather than to present something that we don't know, a diabasak. And therefore, we need to ensure that that electors list, that whatever we're present. One of the recommendations that throughout all of those reports that the OS is making, there need to be some sort of coordination between civil institutions, namely the registry, immigration department, those departments that can validate persons coming in one, how long a person may be out of a country, and deaths. So that way, and the Electoral Commission itself must have the necessary resource and technology to on a regular basis, cleanse the list, update the list, and to ensure that when elections are called, the list presented is not a corrupted list. And as I said a few minutes ago, the only reason why Prime Minister Skerrit calls this election is because he knows we have those deficiencies in our system, in the process as far as our electoral process, and he takes advantage of that. And it's time that we do what is necessary and take the appropriate action, present the legislations, but present it in a way, as I said, based on what obtains elsewhere. that we can do better since we are coming in at the back end now, and we don't repeat some of the mistakes of the other islands. Granted, no law is going to be perfect at the first go. I accept that. And that is why you will have occasionally amendments to various bits of legislation, because it's evolving. It's a dynamic process. It's not static. Democracy is constantly, we've got it, we safeguard it. And you may do something now, and 5 years down the road, technology changed, things have changed. Even the whole software that maybe they might be using to capture information need to be upgraded. But what I'm saying, once we are going in now, we must go in a position of strength, informed, so that what the outcome out of it, we will have a good outcome.
All right, Alvin, thank you very, very much indeed for those very, very useful information that I can tell you. Basically, what I got from you, Alvin, is that we need to guard our democracy, and whatever recommendations, whatever reform process that we are going into as Dominicans, then we should patronize, we should take note of what is happening in the region out there, what is good, what is working for them. We can emulate, and what is bad, what is not working for them, we can, sort of try to rectify here as we are trying to bring about a much freer and fairer process indeed. So that is what I got from your information here this afternoon, and I want to say thank you very much indeed. Folks, we are still trying to get Joshua Francis in the conversation here this afternoon. So once we can rectify that issue, and then we'll be having that conversation with Joshua Francis. He's trying to rectify something technical that is in the back. Let me take a few comments here, Brother Alvin, so that we can digest before we move on. Let me see here. Veronica Pascal is writing here. I don't know how the electoral office is making it so difficult to cleanse that list. What would you respond in that regard to Pascal?
Well, my response to Pascal, I think it's a great observation that she has made. But at the end of the day, it's we the people that have to protect and safeguard our democracies. As I have said before, I mean, our Constitution bestows on us certain rights and obligations and responsibilities. It's a contract between we the people and whoever is in government to govern. Mm-hmm. And if on the government side they breach the contract, then we have a right to take action. I don't see no different way. And therefore, if we sit back and believe and expect the commission to do what needs to be done on their own, they may not do it. We have to bring about the pressure on them in whatever form it takes. We have to do it. As I said, I don't always want to disclose strategy here per se. It's not a wise thing to do. But outside of this program, I can certainly provide certain strategic moves and actions that can be taken. So it's a matter of us ensuring and enforcing that they take certain action.
Yeah, cool. Ivinia Hill, let all ideas contain Alvin. Ivinia Hill is right in here. And I think you answered that earlier, but I just need you to sort of answer that person, Ivinia Hill, direct, so that they could understand why we are discussing that topic over and over right here on this program. As well, we also, I want to say here as host of this program, we also touch on many, many other issues. But that situation in terms of free and fair elections, we take it as our mantra, because without free and fair elections in any country, in any democratic country, then the lives of the citizenry would be meaningless. Ivinia Hill is writing in that regard, and I need you to answer, Alvin, to that person. Only on one civil topic, you all on day in, day out. So most civil topics it have around the country. Only one topic, election. Your response, Alvin.
Well, again, I respect the question and the way it's posed, but I don't agree respectfully. As I've always said, I mean, take any other topic. Take, for example, the economic situation in Dominica, the fact that the economy is jacked up. Take the fact that agriculture is not doing as it should. Take the fact that the college hasn't been repaired since Hurricane Maria. Take the fact that nurses have not been able to get a raise. Take the fact that we are short of medicine at the hospital. Take the fact that the roads are not repaired as they are. Take any one of this, the fact that First Domestic has to close down. I mean, insurance is supposed to be regulated through the Ministry of Finance. So why would it be, how all of a sudden the ministry would get up one morning and realize First Domestic is going away? So all of these are a result of when you elect persons into office who do not have vision and who are not in a position to do the right thing for the country. So it doesn't matter what area you look at. The point remains that unless we can get our elections right, unless we have a process. I mean, as I said, look at St. Lucia. St. Lucia has their concerns, but they change the parties based on what the party is able to deliver. If St. Lucian feel, well, hey, Chasney didn't do right, so we're going to remove him and put somebody else. Take Antigua. Gaston Brown won on a 1-seat majority. Take Grenada. Mitchell has been there, was going for his 6 terms. The guy says, you know what? You are messing us up. Our economy is jacked up. We don't want you again. We want better roads. We want better schools. We want better hospital. So we're going to take you out. After 2 years in the cold, the opposition, this young guy came in, restructured the party, and won the election. So in response to that question, I would say that nothing else matters. I think it was right.
Yes, and just to, are you hearing me, Alvin?
Right, President Biden in his State of the Union address just this past week. Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, go ahead.
President Biden just made the point. He made the point that with democracy, everything is possible. Without democracy, nothing is possible. So I just want to say to this viewer that nothing else matters if we cannot get our elections right, our democracy right. And while there may be other issues she might feel that there is need to discuss, all of those issues come as a secondary subset to the fact that we do not have in place or we have not elected persons who can adequately, seriously govern the country. That's my response.
Yes, and just to add to your response, Alvin, is that all the countries that you mentioned a while ago, especially those in our regional basin, all these countries except Dominica, they have done some things to sort of rectify, regulate, fix, whatever term you want to use, their electoral problems in the country. And so hence, the fact remains that these countries have been able to change their government. The citizens have been able to change their government through that same process.
That's right.
That, as you said, may not be perfect.
That's right.
But it's a work in progress.
That's right. Absolutely.
Dominica, Alvin, on the other hand, we have had a government in Dominica for 20-something years. And it's Dominica that's the only country in the region that it's like, you know, as we're going for a carnival season there. All mass. What they say about all mass? All mass.
Yeah.
It's just like all mass.
Yep. Absolutely.
The shenanigans that goes on in our elections, the other countries, they sort of have these things under a controlled situation.
Yep.
Although they have their little issues here and there, but it is not like Dominica.
Yeah.
In Antigua, you have to go and present yourself to a polling officer with your card, Alvin.
Yeah.
I was over there. I know, I saw. If, for example, your card is lost or whatever it is, and you show yourself to vote, they put in place a temporary card for that day just for you to vote, just for the person to exercise the franchise.
Yeah.
But
and not only that, to get that ID, you have to present a number of documents to get a voter's ID card issued, you know.
That is what I'm coming to say, Alvin.
Okay.
Even with the temporary measure that they have in place, you have to show, you have to prove You have to satisfy these people that you are Alvin Thomas. Other than that, that temporary card will not be issued to you, my brother. In Dominica, we just show up. We just show up and say a name. And once that name is on a list, it is crossed out, you're given a ballot. Alvin, how can we continue in that situation in Dominica? How?
Certainly not.
How?
Certainly not.
We cannot.
Not. I mean,
so just to answer Hill in connection to what you said a while ago, that is like ban mass. We cannot continue like that, Hill. So that is why we have to stick on that topic about fixing our business where election is going, because our livelihood is based on that.
Absolutely.
The economy is based on that. The failing businesses in Dominica is based on that. The price of bread is based on that.
Absolutely.
So why don't you want us to speak about it, expound on it, pound it until we get it right? Just why?
That's right. Yep. I think one of my favorite Calypsonian was Mighty Spider.
I have that song queued up, Alvin. You know.
You have a song, Look How We Come.
Yes, I.
Oh, you have that song queued up?
I have that song queued
Look
up.
How We Come.
The next track that will be played.
Spider. We need to listen to that song. Go back. Look how we come. So I think that
let's just give the people a little of that song, Alvin.
I don't need nobody to tell me what is going on in my country. Oh, I can see all the confusion, hatred, jealousy, and division. We don't have a sound economy, only hardship, stress, and misery. Those interests don't come from no banana. Rosy gone and left us to suffer. I tell you, the Christmas season, 60 apples that were sold in town. Day by day, Lord, we keep going down. Poorer, that is how we come. All your bananas gone, your cocoa on the ground, still waiting for the vision to come. And to make matters worse, look the apparat ass, put a 5% sales tax on us.
Alvin, did you know how long ago that this brother Spider sang this number?
I don't know, man. Maybe you could help me.
Long time ago, Alvin. Long time ago.
Long time. And he talk about, I hear talk about red flags or something like that somewhere later down in it. But you know, I think Dolofty, you know, I'm trying to see what's the best way to say it. Like they say, sometimes you cut your nose to spite your face or something like that.
Yes.
Because until and that, I mean, let's I always like to use some sort of parallel or analogy or whatever. If, for example, take the credit union, because which I was a part of. I was very active in the credit union before I migrated. If you have and you elect a bad board of directors to your credit union, what do you think is going to happen? They'll manage badly. They will Kool-Aid the credit union. If you elect or you hire bad management to the company will Kool-Aid. The same is with the government. So why you might say, well, why the company or why the credit union? No. Until we get this thing right, in the right place and the right way, and that right way is to get rid of this inept, corrupt government. We will continue to have all those issues and none of them are going to be fixed. So even if we come here and say, well, let's talk about education, or let's talk about the fact that maybe the gas price is going up, or let's talk about the fact that the hospital doesn't have adequate medicine, or let's talk about the fact that public servants haven't gotten a raise, or anything of those matters. It all goes back to the fact that we do not have in place persons with vision, persons who are committed to the cause, persons who are honorable, persons who realize, as I have said before in this program, one of the tenets of my JC's organization Is service to humanity is the best work of life. They don't provide service to humanity. They provide service to themselves. So I think this is the crux of the matter. We have to continue speaking about electoral reform. And as I said, ensure that whatever we put in place, we adopt some of the best practices, given what we know obtained in other islands who have done it before, that we can do it a little better. And until we get that right and done properly, we will have all of the other problems that have been identified.
All right, thank you very much, Alvin. Another comment here on the live feed. It says here from Alan Pierre. Yes, Alan Pierre writes, I always hear this nonsense, but this current system has been used for all previous elections as if it can't be rectified or improved upon. Think of those flashlights, Nokia phones, that's a good example up here. Think of those flashlight Nokia phones we used to use before smartphones came along. We all moved to smartphones because we realized that it could do everything that the old phone could do and so much more.
Well, again, Lofty, I'm not sure I get exactly what the guest is, or the caller is alluding to.
Basically, what that person is saying, technically minded speaking, is that we used to have these old phones before. These phones that we used to have before. We used to call some of them even fridges. They were so big, they were very bulky, and over the years, Alvin, these phones has basically transformed into what we have now. We call them the smartphones.
Okay.
And so the point that person is making, comparing those phones to our old electoral system that we're trying to fix.
Oh, okay.
Why did we move? Why are we satisfied?
Okay.
From moving from these old phones to what we now have, the smartphone, which can do what the old phones could do.
Right.
And can do so much more. That is the point that person is saying. So why not fix the system?
Well, yeah, and again, Lofty, this is not rocket science, you know. See what I'm saying? This is not rocket science.
I think, I think we have Joshua here now. Let us see Alvin if we can. Sorry, Alvin, for.
No, that's good. That's okay. That's okay.
It's all right. I'm hearing him laughing now, so that's good. His audio is coming.
Mr. Joshua, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Good evening. What was going on? I thought Flo suspended your account, man. What happened?
I was trying to figure out exactly what was happening this evening, but I'm here.
Joshua, you're a brother of great tenacity, so you sort it out.
Yes,
all right. Good to see you, my brother.
Yeah, thank you. Same here. I had to Lofty because this is my working device. So whatever problem it had, I had to get it resolved.
All right, indeed.
Okay.
But Josh, yes, thanks for coming on. And we advertise you being on the program already, so a number of persons are looking forward for you in terms of your deliveries here, especially on a situation, a topic that is, plaguing some Dominicans, especially or young persons in Dominica, where the National Employment Program is concerned. I know you did some work, or you spoke to, or have some much more detailed information as to what may be going on there with these young people and their term of employment with that program. Can you just shed some light as to what may be going on there, Josh? Good evening again.
Good evening, of course, to you, Loftus, Mr. Thomas, and to all your listeners. I said Matt, Lofty.
It's all right, Josh. Any name you give me is all right.
Right. A pleasure to be here. Yes, Loftus, just a couple of days ago, I was invited by Senator Annette Sanford to speak with a few Kalinago persons with respect to the NEP program. Apparently, it is alleged that a number of Kalinago persons lost their NEP positions for political reasons. I'm not too sure whether you recall, but during the last general election, a former parliamentary representative for the Salibia constituency had indicated to the Kalinago territory that should NEP workers fail to vote for the Dominica Labour Party at the last general election, then they were at risk of losing their jobs. Other utterances were made to that effect, whereby the people were told that they were being looked at, they were being spied upon, and that they had to be careful. In essence, they were told that if they desire to keep their jobs, they had to support the Dominica Labour Party.
Josh, I think not tripping you. I think I have that clip from Kelly Grano Sr. Let me just let the listeners hear exactly what you are alluding to at this time from Mr. Grano during the last general elections.
I'll tell you, and I said that, the results will tell us. We've got spies everywhere. We've got people watching you. Mm-hmm. So don't come and think you can corner us. You hear me? I'm telling you that in a nice way, you know, Mali. I don't want to say it in any bad, for you give any bad feeling.
Let's just hear Mr. Grano one more time, and then we'll let Josh continue on the conversation here.
Your best and only choice is to vote Cozier Frederick, vote the Dominica Labour Party, so that we can continue taking care of you. And I'll tell you, and I said that, the results will tell us. We've got spies everywhere. We've got people watching you. So don't come and think you can corner us. You hear me?
That was the brother on the platform, Mr. Kelly Grano. Basically, I am saying now, sort of threatening some persons, if they don't vote for the Dominica Labour Party, what may become of them? They got spies watching them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
let me just quickly say, just very quickly,
yes.
You see, when I say election has consequences, go ahead, Josh. I just want to make that point. Election has consequences.
Yes, there are consequences, not just election, but who you vote for has consequences. And in that situation, it is clear that the Dominica Labour Party operatives in the Kalinago territory and other parts of Dominica, but I can speak to the Kalinago territory because I had the opportunity to speak with some of the victims. As Loftus indicated, I met with a number of victims and listened to their narratives concerning what went down. Of course, the clip played by Loftus in respect to Mr. Kelly Grano indicates that the employees were warned, the NEP workers were warned, and some of them received letters as late as January 18th, in some cases January 23rd, indicating to them that they were employed for another year and in some cases another 2 years. 4 days thereafter, some of these very recipients, some of these persons who were given job extensions, were informed that their services were no longer required and therefore their contracts were terminated. I asked the young persons, the victims, exactly why would that have happened? And they are of the view that is because they either did not vote or the Labour Party thought that they voted for Muter, the independent candidate. So what went down is that, as Mr. Grano had indicated, they were spying on these NEP workers. And therefore, if it was perceived that these workers did not vote for the Dominica Labour Party, it appears that they lost their jobs. And for those who did not go out to vote constructively, they did not vote for the Dominica Labour Party, and they too suffered a loss of job. So that has happened. So there are several issues with that, Loftus and Mr. Thomas. And I do not even want to look at the legal part of it, because the legal part of it really has to be dealt with in a court of law. And then when you're considering legal action, you have to look at the viability of the case. You have to look at the remedies, if any, you can obtain from litigating the matter. And in those circumstances, as you know, litigation is very expensive. And even if I were to do this matter pro bono, the question is, if there is a case, what remedies, if any, are available? So upon further legal assessment, we concluded that it wasn't really viable to pursue the matter because, of course, it's an arguable case, given that these workers may not fall under the legislative framework to be defined as employees. The job is within an internship program, and it speaks for itself. An employer who has somebody under an internship program can dismiss the person anytime within 6 months. As you know, initially these jobs were being given for a contractual period of 6 months, thereafter a year, and then extended to 2 years. So the persons who are grieved, the persons who lost their jobs, especially those who were given 2-year contracts, they may very well have a case. But if you were to go to the employment tribunal to raise an issue, who are the people who make up the tribunal? How long is this going to take? Another year, another 2 years? Eventually it finds itself within the legal system. How long will it take for them to get redress? And what are the benefits? So really, when you look at it from a legal point of view, it may not make much sense to pursue it. However, the bigger concern here is the abuse that comes with it, the political consequences. As Mr. Thomas said earlier, there are consequences to an election, and in this case, there are consequences for those who refused, failed, or neglected to vote the Dominica Labour Party. So that's where we are, Loftus. My biggest concern would be the rippling effects of what has happened to these young people. You're looking at people in the age range between 18 and 40 years old. Some of them are mothers. Some of them have never had another job. Some of them had legitimate expectations. Of course, some of them took little loans, personal loans, either from friends or family members, legitimately expecting to make further monies to pay off these loans and to take care of themselves. And suddenly they were told that they did not have a job. And more so, the situation is even more grim for the persons who were given employment contracts, and 4 days after they were told that they do not have a job. You can only imagine the psychological trauma that could impose on those victims.
Yes, indeed. Josh, there are 3 questions, and thanks for your comments thus far on that, situation that is unfolding with the NEP workers. 3 questions directed at you from Viva Mamo on the feed. And so let me just ask you the questions one. Well, I'll ask all 3 questions, but then I'll ask you one by one so that you can go deeper into, see if just you can provide some answers for Viva Mamo and others who may be interested in knowing the answers to these questions. The 3 questions are, I'll start with one. 1, what exactly the NEP agreement states with respect to the termination? 2, how has the government breached that agreement? And 3, are the NEP contracts recognized as employment contracts? If so, what status/legislation offers protection to NEP workers apart from the common law contract? So let's take one at a time, Josh. What exactly the NEP agreement states with respect to their termination? Question number 1 to you from Vivi.
Well, the first question would be to determine whether these contracts are legally enforceable contracts. And the answer would be yes, because you have the government of Dominica operating through different sectors or different ministries, as in the case of the Kalinago people. It operates through the Kalinago Upliftment and Kalinago Affairs. Mm-hmm. And of course, these are young people. They meet the requirements to be employed. They're at least 18 years old. They are adults. They have sound mind. And there would have been an arrangement between these individuals and the government of Dominica. There is consideration, meaning that they would be paid a certain amount of money monthly. As in the case of most Dominicans, they would get $800 a month. I'm not too sure how many days they would work within the month to attract $800 EC. And therefore, it is legally enforceable. They are simple contracts. You have an offer, you have acceptance, you have consideration, you have capacity, and therefore they can be enforced in a court of law. However, given that they are simple contracts, there really isn't any outlined terms and conditions. So there isn't a termination clause, there isn't a jurisdiction clause, there isn't a job description. Of course, those are defined orally when the person appears to work. As I said earlier, Loftus, the question is, given that there aren't defined terms and conditions, whether the employer could have simply taken away the jobs from these people, and that is left to be determined because this is arguable. I think the second question would be, whether it is legally recognized by our legislation.
No, whether the let me get back to it. How has the government breached the agreement?
Well, by making a promise and discharging the promise. If Loftus, if I were to employ you to do a job for me and we enter an arrangement, whether oral or in writing, and in this case, most of the people got written contracts. As I said, there isn't outline terms and conditions, but they are simple contracts. And I say, Loftus, okay, you're going to do some electrical work for me. I'm going to pay you X amount. I expect you to appear at my home on Monday, tomorrow, the 13th of February, 2023, and you agree. And then tomorrow you don't appear. The question is whether you have breached a contract. Well, if there isn't any consideration, I did not make any part payments or a deposit to you, then it may not be a breach because you're at liberty to decide you're not going to come. However, even in those cases, matters of that nature can be debated and argued in a court of law. It is an arguable case because, again, I would have legitimate expectation. Maybe I would have done something detrimental to my affairs based on the expectations which I have. And this is what we are saying. These young people would have done certain things detrimental to their interest, taking a loan on the basis that you have a job. So you have a legitimate expectation that at the end of the month, you're going to get paid. And therefore, you would have borrowed some monies from your brother or your sister just to find out that you no longer have a job. Hence, you would have been aggrieved in one way or the other. So it is legally recognized. They are simple contracts. They are recognized in law. The question is whether these people have redress in a court of law. And it's arguable on the basis that they are internship programs. Internship programs speak for themselves. They are not permanent employees. In certain areas of our legal framework, they are not necessarily considered to be employees or permanent employees. Of course not. You know very well that with an internship program, the employer can dismiss you whenever he or she wants on the basis that you're not performing or that he no longer needs your services. You know, but Loftus, we have to look at the bigger picture of this, you know, the whole question of what really is the NEP program, what's its purpose? And I think what's happening to a number of Dominicans reflects what the NEP program is meant to be and the problems with the NEP program. The NEP program is coming out to be more of a political program than an economic program. Because of course, every country employs certain economic devices to generate growth, generate employment. And the question is whether the NEP program was really designed to generate an economic growth and to generate employment, to spur economic expansion. And given the types of jobs under the NEP program in terms of acquiring skills, because they say it's an internship program, and with an internship program, it's expected of you to acquire certain skills and knowledge, which you can use somewhere, somehow in a permanent job. But cleaning the roadside, I mean, how much skills do you need? How much tutelage do you need to learn to clean a drain or to plant flowers? And more so, you've seen what's happening. You see how this thing is being used as a political football. Basically, vulnerable people being used to support the Dominican Labour Party based on the NEP programs, based on the NEP jobs given to them.
Yeah, true. I think thank you very much, Josh, for your explanation thus far. I think you answered the first question already, but I'll ask you. Nonetheless, are the NEP contracts recognized as employment contracts? If so, what status/legislation offers protection to the NEP workers apart from the common law contract?
Well, if I recall just off my head, because I don't have employment or labor law contracts in front of me, but we have several pieces of legislation that protects the labor force or employees. The NEP program is not necessarily captured in all of these pieces of legislation. Okay. And maybe common law would be applicable. As I said, this is an arguable case. Mm-hmm. The people who I spoke with, they were not necessarily interested in pursuing litigation in the court of law. And as such, I didn't go back to my office to research the law to ascertain whether there's a case. They were more concerned about the political consequences and the way going forward. And they were concerned about what alternatives they have, if any, because clearly they were put out of a job and now they were questioning what were they going to do. But I would think that our legislation does cover some of these NEP employees. To what extent, I cannot tell you at this hour, because at the end of the day, Lofty, they are internship programs. And if you're an intern, you really don't have the rights which a permanent employee will enjoy.
True. A matter of
You're
fact,
not really covered. Yeah.
yes, a matter of fact, I've been hearing, I don't know how true it is, that some of these NEP workers, they approach some of the financial institutions here for, whatever loan facility, whatever it is, and they were turned down, basically on the grounds that their type of employment is not recognized, so that they could not, courtesies could not be extended to them.
I don't know what is Mr. Thomas's view, given he's a former trade unionist himself.
Yes.
But I beg to disagree that they ought not to be recognized, because you're looking at persons with legal capacity. You're looking at persons who enter a contract with the intention to be paid. They provide the services and they pay Social Security.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why would they not be recognized. What I understand is that they may not be protected under certain pieces of legislation, but they are and ought to be recognized. They are workers. You may not want to call them employees, but they are workers. They provide a service. They leave their homes. They spend hours carrying out whatever service or duties which they are given, and they expect to be paid at the end of the month. So any person or institution which say they ought not to be recognized, I disagree with them. I think that's erroneous in law.
Yeah. Alvin, could we ask you to put on your trade union cap now? Help us here.
You sending me way back then, boy. No, absolutely. I share the concerns and the comments that Joshua has made. Let's get away from the nuances of whether they will call X, Y, or Z or intern and all that kind of stuff. If they do have a contract of employment, which is what it is, a contract of employment for a specific start period and an end period, and also contain specific remunerations in there, I'll pay you X amount for whatever it is, they are protected under the Contract Act. Without necessarily looking at the details of what's written in the letter, and I think it is Act of 1983, I remember the exact number, but they would somewhere fit within the ambit of the contract. But like he says, I agree with him. And again, I can't help but goes back. Election have consequences. I mean, look at some other cases, and Josh made mention to that. You may decide, well, hey, I'm going to challenge this matter in the courts. But look at how many cases have been sitting at the courts for 5, 6, 7 years. Why? Because of political interference. So that may go there, and you may never see the light of day of that case for another 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And that is the that is the frustrating part about it. But I think too that I was just, while Josh was talking, I was just looking briefly through our Constitution. And again, this is something we could explore further from a legal standpoint, where your right as a Dominican to gainful employment, your wage or your salary that's paid is like your property. It's quote unquote can be defined as property. Okay? Mm-hmm. And under our Constitution, if you're denied right to your property, that's an infringement of your constitutional right, especially where we can show now that is being done because of political interference. So while it's kind of complex, it is not something that cannot be challenged. But like he says, you go in there and you spend, a whole time in there arguing. But on the flip side, I will say though that sometimes it's necessary to try those things. We still have to have a certain level of confidence in the justice system. Bad as things may be, as bleak as it may look, I think it is there for specific purpose. And you never know what's the outcome of a case until you try the case. Every case that Joshua knows as an attorney that he may reference and say, well, I refer to case of so from 1958. Maybe that was the first time it went before the court, 1958, and there was a decision on it, which we are now using in 2023. But until such time you present it to the courts and present your case, and you either, you are successful or unsuccessful, then you don't know what's the outcome. And that's how law operate and cases operate. There's always have to be a first time where it's presented, and the courts will make a decision and say, hey, I think you're right. You were done wrong, or you were not right. The other side was okay. But it's just that is the frustration part. And that's why I go back again, and I will continue to say, election has consequences, and the people you vote for, as just said rightly. I mean, just imagine a so-called person who wants to represent the people goes on a political platform and makes that kind of statement. I mean, come on, Lofty, in which part of planet Earth these things happen? And people sees nothing wrong with that. It's okay, business as usual. Well, the guy just saying his thing, I mean, you have the head of the political party saying chupul, gatewas, and all those kinds of stuff. I mean, this is where we have
got. It's unbecoming for sure.
Yeah. And we got to move away from that. And one of the ways we can move is to have a reform and make sure that when people put up themselves for election, we have a position where we can vet them and we can not elect them if they're not good candidates.
Yeah, Joshua agreed with us for half an hour, so let's see if we can, use him.
Just gonna stay with us, man. Don't worry.
Yeah, I am not. I'm around.
That's cool. We have 20-something more minutes to end the program.
Yeah, I'm around.
But Rupert Cadet is right. He's asking an all-important question. Just because we know in Dominica, some NEP workers are there for a very, very long time, and Cadet is asking, what period of time, Josh, does Dominica law stipulate for any internship probation or internship / probation? What period of time?
Usually Lofty is 6 months.
6 months.
Yes, I have become aware of 1 or 2 persons in the private sector who ask for an extension of a probationary period.
Okay.
I'm just here looking for the laws because some time ago I looked up, or I was researching something, and it came to my attention that really it is 6 months. So if you take someone as an intern, usually under a number of circumstances, you put that person under a probationary period of 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, you either hire the person full-time, or you give the person a contract for a year or for 2 years or whatever it is, or you dismiss the person. However, there isn't anything in law which forbids someone or an employer from renewing or from giving a new internship period. So if you work for 6 months and the employer is of the view that you may need another 3 months for training, I have not seen any area in law. I'm subject to correction because, of course, in law, there is always an exception and one has to do his research. This is not one of my strongest area of law. I'm not no employment or labor law specialist. Yes.
But let me ask you, Joshua, in terms of the specific terminology that's used in the letter, does it says you employ as an intern? Is that what the letter says? Because as I said, I haven't seen it myself. Does the letter says, I employ you, Alvin Thomas, as an intern?
It speaks of an internship program. It actually uses the word internship, suggesting that you are employed as an intern.
Okay.
By virtue of the fact, it says that you are employed in an internship program.
Okay.
The natural inference would be that the employee is an
I think that's a little different. If it stipulates in the letter, because as I said, I haven't seen the copy myself, so I can't speak directly. But if somewhere in the letter says, Alvin Thomas is employed as an intern for a specific period, then that might be a little different in the sense that it's not a strict employment contract. But if that word is not there, then that makes it a little different. So I guess maybe that's the kicker in there, that word. So as I said, I have the letter myself. So
yeah, but from just speaking back on your point in terms of the point that you're resolving about internship program, as Josh alluded to being in the letter. So to you and Josh, is that an abuse now of the young people employed under that quote unquote internship program, internship facility, internship setup? And that internship period is like it is a never ending period.
It's exploitation.
Because there's supposed to be a time in terms of a cutoff.
Yeah, because
I know some persons have been in Dominica working in that program for 10 years now.
Exactly. You can't be an intern for 10 years and 5 years. That's exploitation. That's a way of abusing the law, abusing the person. So that in itself is unacceptable, that is unacceptable. I mean, straight off, as a straight response in terms of the contract, I mean, it would not fall directly on the labor contract. But then if you take other things into account, as I said, if you look at, say, you've had this person there for 5 years, 10 years, so there's continuity. The court is going to look at continuity. You look at the whole question, I don't have it before me, but I can go into the ILO, right to work, certain ILO standards that may be contravened. And you look at the Constitution. So it's a combination of things. You can present a case to say, well, hey, this seems to be an abuse, okay? And while it may not directly apply to the labor contract as we know it, but when you take the totality, we're looking at the totality and a pattern of things, especially if there was, how should I say, continuous renewal of the contract. It ends, you give them another contract, and you've had this person here for 5 years, 10 years. You can argue, as I said, to the court, well, hey, I mean, are you saying this person is not employed contractually? This intern thing is just a joke. So it depends. It's not straight and dry, but I don't think it is something that cannot be raised and challenged. I mean, in my union days, I'm telling you, I would jump on a case like that and take it for what it's worth and fight it. And like I say, let the chips fall where it is.
And I agree with Mr. Thomas that it is arguable in a court of law, and sometimes you have to test the law, Lofty. So if a group of these aggrieved individuals come together and decide they want to pursue the matter, especially those who were given the 2-year contract, because it's clear, you give somebody a contract saying that he or she has been granted an extension of 2 years on his employment terms and conditions. And 4 days thereafter, you're telling the person that he or she is terminated from the same job. Something about that is not right, especially if your letter of termination does not provide any cause, any reason why you are terminating that person's employment, except to say that you no longer need the person's services, without showing that circumstances have changed, without showing that there has been some structural changes which has caused you to no longer be able to employ the person. And I mean, we're looking at this thing from a legal point of view, but the bottom line is that we have to look at the surrounding circumstances. You just made a clip and we must not lose focus and lose sight of that reality, where you have a former parliamentary representative, a key operative of the Dominica Labour Party in the Salibia constituency, telling the constituents that they are being looked at and that they must be careful how they vote, because should they fail to vote for the Dominica Labour Party, they are at risk of losing their jobs. And that's exactly what happened.
Josh, one more time yes. For the persons who may have just tuned in, let me just let these persons not hear you, but hear the former Pal Rep say that in his own words.
Right.
And I'll tell you, and I said that, the results will tell us We've got spies everywhere. We've got people watching you. So don't come and think you can corner us. You hear me?
Yes, Josh. Don't think you can corner.
And that's the reality. I mean, we're here and we have smiles on our faces, but there are people who are in despair because, number one, they had the short-term employment, which itself is something that we really need to look at. The whole NEP employment framework, whether that's what Dominica needs. And more so, fine, it's in existence. It provides food on people's table. But where you have a gentleman, a former parliamentary representative, telling his people that we are spying you, you must be careful who you vote for. In essence, that's what he said.
Yeah.
And when the persons either voted or failed to vote, they would have lost their jobs. Of course, you know, nationally, we have had a reduction in the numbers under the NEP program. And we know that the obvious reason is because it appears that the government purse has dried up or is drying up, not dried up, but is subject to challenges. Let's put it this way. It has not dried up, but it's subject to challenges. So therefore, less money is available to fuel these programs. Number two, there were expansion of the NEP program prior to both previous elections. In 2019, you saw a sudden expansion. And then the last time around, persons who had been laid off were asked to come back to work for obvious reasons, lofty, basically to seduce these people to think that they were being taken care of by the government. And therefore, in exchange, that these people would support the Dominica Labour Party. Some of them refused to go and vote. And therefore, by not going to vote constructively, they voted against the Dominica Labour Party. And as such, they lost their jobs. And of course, we heard other members of the Dominica Labour Party in other constituencies other than the Kalinago territory saying that they, meaning the Labour Party, would know who they would vote for. That's another thing you have to take into consideration. Now, we never had that kind of practice in our politics.
True.
Everybody always felt that voting was sacred. It was secret. And there was no fear that any other person would be aware or cognizant of who our nationals were voting for. However, in recent times, people have been placed under fear that the Dominica Labour Party government would know who they vote for. And they have been reminded, they have been told so. In 2019, in the Roseau South constituency, the current parliamentary representative told the young people of Newtown that her party would know who they vote for. And some persons called me and asked me whether that is true. And they were in morbid fear. They were concerned because they felt that if the Labour Party were to know who they vote for, then the consequence, which Mr. Thomas keeps talking about, would be negative. They would lose their jobs. And you know how vulnerable we are. Generally, most Dominicans are economically vulnerable. In as much as we may say certain things, we ask people to stop being passive. But at the end of the day, when you're very vulnerable, you prefer one bread than no bread. And the Dominica Labour Party has taken advantage of these vulnerables. And I think we really need to focus on many limbs around the NEP, because we just started exploring some aspects of the NEP program. I mean, of course, we are talking about persons who lost their jobs. We need to look at this thing from a greater and wider economic sphere. We have to look at the rippling effects of the persons who have lost their jobs. We have to look at the political motivation behind the program. We have to look at the sustainability of the program. How long is this program going to go on? The meaning of it, the results of it, the viability of it.
Yep.
Yeah, but let me just say,
Thomas, what I was going to do, Thomas, just give me a little squeeze there in terms of time. We played that clip twice. That is one of the most, dangerous clips that we heard from Kelly Grano on that political platform. But just spare me a minute, Thomas, just before you come in. Let us play about 3 to 4 minutes of his presentation so that the persons could now connect that line of reasoning that he made to sort of see where Kelly Grant was coming.
Boy, you're going to hurt my head tonight, boy. That was
just 3-4 minutes, Alvin.
I'll tell you. And I said that. The results will tell us. We've got spies everywhere. We've got people watching you. So don't come and think you can corner us. You hear me? I'm telling you that in a nice way, you know. Mali, I don't want to say it in any bad, for you to give any bad feeling. I'm just telling you, be careful. Be careful with that sacred vote you have. Be careful. Do the right thing. Do the right thing, not for Kozia, not for labor, but for yourself and your children. Because labor is going to win anyway. We are going back to government. Don't you want to be there with us? Now, how are you going to be there with us? You're going to come out on the 6th as early as you can. We'll take care of you. We'll take you to the polling stations. We'll provide everything we can to make sure that you have access to that polling station. And the most grateful thing you can do in your entire life is to vote Labour. It's a simple thing. We're not saying that. We don't have any gun by your head saying, if you don't vote Labour, I'll shoot you. We're not saying that. We ain't saying that. All we are saying, scratch my back, I'll scratch your back.
Josh, Alvin, I'll stop it here for now. Scratch my back, I'll sure scratch your back.
I mean, this is so disgusting in 2022.
And there's more, there's much more.
So disgusting where we have come. I mean, it just, I don't even, can't find the adjectives to describe that. That's where we've come as a country. But let me just go back a bit, because I'm reading while Josh was speaking. I was reading some of the comments coming through. Let me see, for example, I see some comments saying, well, the law says, no, you're not contract, and the contract is specific, you're an intern and you're not this and all of that. And while I understand if we're looking at it from a purely straight point of view in terms of what the employment contract says, I think we have to look, as I said, the bigger picture. Let me just use as an example. When out of the 2019 election, the petitioners had filed a petition to the High Court challenging the outcome of the elections. The High Court ruled that these guys had no jurisdiction and threw out everything. And as a result, you didn't have a decision of the court. So it was termed, whatever termed it was, that it couldn't go any further. It went to the Court of Appeal, and they said, we can't do anything because there's no decision. We cannot decide on something without a decision. When it went to the CCJ looked at the Constitution, and the CCJ said, although you may be correct in the sense what Justice Glasgow and the other level says, but when we look at the bigger picture of the implications and the applications of the law, this thing touches on this folks' constitutional right. And as such, we at the CCJ believe we have an obligation to look at it. And it was on that basis that the CCJ looked at it and came out with their, I may not call it a ruling, but came out with whatever decisions or outcome. And none of us, a lot of us, I suppose, those in the legal and non-legal fraternity, never saw that coming. Even the Attorney General of Dominica took strong objection to too. How can the CCJ say that and do this and do that? The point I'm saying is that we do have a labor contract law in place that outlines what it is and what an employee is defined as for purposes of the act. But if it can be shown that a government now is circumventing the intention of the act by denying people gainful employment under the pretext of a term, whatever it is, then I think you can go to the court. As a matter of fact, maybe herein comes the time for this labor contract act to be revised. And the court will say, hey, that's an abuse. You are now as an employer abusing workers. So the point I'm trying to make, while I accept that if you take a very straight, narrow perspective about it and say, well, okay, the act says you should do this, the act says, yeah, that is true. But I think when you look at the totality of the situation, and as I say, the fact that you have had people there for 5 years, 10 years, because at the end of the day, like I said earlier in our earlier portion of the program, your constitution and the people, it's a social contract. And I, as a Dominican, has a right to work. That's one of the things that a government's supposed to provide, the environment so that I can work and earn a living and support myself. And if no, you are denying me that right on the pretext that the law says this or that says that, and where you bring in politics again, I think it is something that can present itself. Yeah. It's not an easy win. Don't get me wrong, but I think one could take a chance. But as Josh rightly said, these things can drag out. We don't know how long it can drag out. But I don't think it is something where we could just take a position and say, oh, the loss is this, the loss is that, so therefore you can't do it.
All right. Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your sound, solid points here. It's 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. We have to leave at 8 o'clock. Josh, your final words with us as we bring this program to a wrap. Thanks for coming again. You're mute. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Lofty, for the invite. And I apologize for what happened earlier. Of course, I had some technical glitches which I had to be cured. But like Mr. Thomas, who seemed bent on testing the law, I believe that the remedy for that situation in respect to the NEP program should be a national drive to educate the young people of Dominica on reasons why they need to stop supporting the Dominica Labour Party. This is a government that has been in our governance for the last 23 years. And when you look at its economic report card, you would note that it has failed to really spur economic growth where employment is created to raise opportunity levels, to raise the standard of living, to raise wages, and to create an environment where our young people can thrive. It is clear we continue to provide education for export. Our young people who travel, particularly to the United States of America for studies, they refuse to come back to Dominica, not because they are unpatriotic, not because they would not like to return to Dominica, but the main reason is because they fear that their return to Dominica would stagnate their lives. It is time that we educate young people on being empowered where they do not have opportunities to go and study, to become self-employed, and to teach them to become more patriotic, more robust, and more vigorous in their stance against the government. We have too many young passive people. We need to help to redefine how they think and to get them to understand why they need to start to talk. I honestly believe that a group of us need to go to every part of Dominica, to touch every life, to convince people to start to talk more, to resist the system more. And with that effort, hopefully within the next 4 years, we can see a change of government whereby we will have people who can bring meaningful differences to Dominica and to take to Dominica to the level that it's supposed to be. Dominica is a place filled with opportunities. It's a place with, when I say opportunities, it's a place with a lot of potential. And I believe a green economy moving in that new direction of organic growth and organic economic development, Dominica can be placed in the right location where young people can finally grow. And this NEP program will naturally be phased out and people will get real jobs, Lofty, and earn a real living and be able to take care of themselves and their family.
Indeed.
So once again, thank you and thanks, Mr. Thomas.
All right, Josh.
Yes. Certainly, Josh.
Yes.
Certainly.
Josh, on behalf of the team, the Civic Vibes team, and the many folks viewing and listening, we want to say thank you for taking time off your Sunday to come and speak on a very important, pertinent topic, especially pertaining to the young people. We know your heart is with the young people at this time, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Loftus.
Take care, Josh. All the best, man. Good to see you again. All right.
Yes, same here.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Alvin, that time has come and gone. Let us do our wrapping up, as it were.
Yeah, well, I mean, Josh, another very stimulating discussion, and that's healthy, though. That's very healthy. That's what a healthy democracy is like, and Civic Vibe is a clear testimony of that. That you have different points of view, discussing an issue. When I read some of the comments in the chat, it is not one where folks are just agreeing to everything said there, or just disagreeing. I think it's a healthy debate, and that's what a real democracy is supposed to be like.
True.
And I think we at this juncture, it is my hope that this year will be really I could say a year maybe of testing, a year of action, a year of bringing about that change that needs to be done. And I am really hoping that the impetus that would give us that energy to move on is surrounded around the electoral reform process. As I said, some people must be saying, "Oh, you guys been talking of this for a long time," but I mean, I'm not going to stop saying that that's what we need to do. We need to get our elections right. We need to get that process right. And until we can get that right and have some better outcomes of our election, then we're going to constantly having problems. So we got to do it. I just want to, before I end, though, to commend you, Lofty, you and the rest of the folks who undertook that protest action on the 7th, the opening of the parliament. I know you were actively involved in that. I think we need more of that. We need more of you coming forward. So I really want to commend you and the many other persons in Dominica who are still on the front line, despite the intimidation and challenges that come with it. And we need to sustain that. We really need to sustain it. We must not just make it a one-time thing and then, maybe have a big time frame before we move again. We constantly have to be in their face, as they say. We got to be in their face and let them understand that we want that change. I've said on this program before that change is painful. It's not going to be easy. No one said it's going to be easy. It's going to be painful. But I think on the other side, when we come out of it, it's going to be successful. But we have to endure that pain, that sustainability to ensure that we get the results. So hopefully next week we can dig again deeper into some of the aspect of the reform. As I said, the number for the areas, the ID card, campaign financing, and the number for the areas, the whole question of residency. One of the areas that the Dominica Labour Party is scared, Prime Minister scared once, is to have, there is in the current law where you have a 5-year time frame for residency. In other words, if you're out of the country 5 years or more, then your name can be striked out. Of course, there is a process to go through. They want to increase that to 10 years. They want to move it from 5 to 10.
We'll delay that in a subsequent program.
No? But these are some of the areas that I think we can touch on. But again, Thank you, guys. I'm going to look at my game. I see right now the game is tied at 7-7. The Chiefs and the Eagles. So it's looking interesting. So I'm going to look at the rest of my Super Bowl and have a few drinks while I looked at the game. All right, Lofty.
All right.
I just wanted to rub that in on you.
Rub it in out. All right, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother. As always, taking time off your Sunday schedule to be here with us, be here with the people. We appreciate that each and every time. Let me say, like Alvin, thank the many, many folks who turned out, who participated, who contributed in one way, shape, or form to the protest action outside our parliament last Tuesday. Let me thank you guys. And yes, that action will continue. So yes, we continue to look to you guys for your continued contribution in that regard. Let me say as well, next week's program, we realize that we'll be right smack into the center of the carnival celebrations. And so the program for next week, it is already sort of taking shape. It will not be too, too heavy in terms of formal information next week, but for sure, we can assure you it will be packed with some cultural information. And so you want to be in tune to the Civic Vibes program next week, where we'll be celebrating and letting you know much more about an aspect of what we celebrate in Dominica and in the region as our Carnival celebration. It promises to be a very interesting program. So we invite you to tune in then from the 6 o'clock hour next week. So folks, that is it from all of us here at the Civic Vibes desk. We want to bid you guys good evening and continue to enjoy what is left of your evening. Thank you very much indeed. We played this number of Spider. We're going to take you out with Spider. Look how we come. And when that song is done, then we will be out. Thank you very much. All right,
Lofty. Take care, man. All the best. All right. Bye.
Nobody to tell me what is going on in my country. Oh, I can see all the confusion, hatred, jealousy, and division. We don't have a sound economy, only hardship, stress, and misery. Those interests no come from no banana. Rosy gone and left us to suffer. I tell you, the Christmas season, 60 apples that were sold in tongue. Day by day, Lord, we keep going down. For that is how we come. All your bananas on, your cocoa on the ground, still waiting for the vision to come. And to make matters worse, look the apparatus, put a 5% sales tax on us. So we keep going down on the road to Sodom, and the whole country keeps going down slowly. Just look at NDC, banana industry, it's going down slowly. It's the Eugenia, Lauren, and Tony. Have us all in this damn tragedy. I tell you, we keep going down. Coney Island, that is how we come. Day by day, Lord, we keep going down. Just like Babel, that is how we come. I said so in my song.